Hi, a quick message from me, Caroline, host of Bumped Business Owner. This episode is part of a very special six-part collaboration with Lucy Wheeler, mum and founder of Lucy Legal. If you're running a business, don't trust AI and Google to cover your legalities. Lucy Legal was created to make your life easier. Check out Lucy Legal for real legal guidance, templates, and support. Go to the link in the show notes of this episode. Now on with the show. Hello and welcome back to today's episode of Bumped Business Owner. I'm your host, Caroline Marshall, and today's episode is a really honest and refreshing conversation about what happens to you when you stop trying to fit your children into your career and instead design your work, your business, and your life around your family. And I'm joined by Lucy Wheeler, founder of Lucy Legal, who is on a mission to make legal support more accessible for small business owners while also building a life that genuinely works for her as a mother. This episode is also the first in a special 6-episode partnership with Lucy Legal, and a really exciting one as Lucy is a returning guest. The first time we spoke, she was the thick of new motherhood and in the early stages of building her business. Now still very much in the reality of raising a young family, I'm so excited to welcome her back to explore how that journey has evolved and dive into areas we didn't get to cover in the first time round. Lucy followed what she describes as a predestined path into law, working within the traditional firm model and on track for a very conventional version of success. But everything shifted when she began planning to become a mother and realised that the legal world she had worked so hard to build a career in simply didn't align with the life she wanted at home. So she made a bold decision to step away from that path and build something entirely different. A business that was flexible, scalable, and designed intentionally around her family, not in competition with it. In this episode, we talk about what that actually looks like in reality, from early motherhood, financial risk and identity shifts, to consciously redesigning roles at home, challenging gender stereotypes, and building a business with clear boundaries and values at its core. This is an episode for any mum who has ever questioned whether the default way of working and parenting is the only way, and what it might look like to do things differently. And Lucy, I'm so happy to have you back. Thank you so much for joining us for this 6-episode partnership, which is the first of its kind, and I'm sure not the last, which is very exciting for us.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for having me back. I'm really excited to hopefully be more coherent than last time, but I'm not going to make any promises. Still very much exhausted, but from a different chapter of motherhood now.
And your episode was so different, and this is why I love all the stages, and this is why it's nice to follow your stages, because for your first episode, what stage of motherhood were you at then?
Had only just had one of the children. So I was literally, I remember it was really interesting because this, I think, was one of those things where I was like, I don't want to turn down this opportunity. And when you are a new mum and you're running your business, you are trying to juggle all of the balls, and you are still very much in the part where you want to prioritize your business over everything else. And sometimes opportunities come in and you can say, not my chapter. This isn't the right time for me. This isn't the right thing to do. But there are also opportunities where you're like, I don't want to say no to this because that opportunity might not come back around. And I was so thrilled and proud to have been asked to be a guest on your podcast that I said yes. And it's just hard, isn't it, when you're in the early sleep deprived stage, to be coherent and to explain how you feel about anything.
My goodness, I think we can all relate to that. And whether it was things in my early months where it would be clients, I didn't want to say no to any discovery calls that came my way. And it sometimes meant being like, oh gosh, what am I doing? What's my job? What's this? And I thought you were brilliant on the first episode, but I know how it feels those early years. And something I want to go into is that you describe your path into law. It's quite predestined, and it sounds like success in law was very different to you at one point to what it is now. And so what was success to you? Like, what was the moment that changed that?
I think I was brought up in an era, like many of your listeners, I would imagine, that you went to school, you worked hard, the working hard was important, and you potentially either went to university or you got a job straight away. And it was all about working hard and climbing up that career ladder. And success was definitely determined by how much you earned and the job title that you had. And that really was what success was. There was no other measure of success apart from that you'd done well in your exams in university and then gone on and gotten the dream job that you'd always wanted to get. And I remember following that path towards happiness, which is what I thought it was. And I didn't appreciate then that you maybe meant to enjoy the journey as you went, because it was things like school and exams, and yes, I had a wonderful time at university, time of my life, all of that kind of thing, but very much reading law at university in London and working very hard. And I was somebody who did have to work hard. I'd done well throughout school by sometimes messing around and that kind of thing, but did always have to do the work. And so that carried on into university. Naturally. Yeah, I mean, I think we all have a level, don't they? And I was that kind of person who the teacher would say, what's the answer to the question? And I would know, and I would just be that annoying person. But I wasn't the person who was inherently just a book person who read everything and knew everything. I had to really work at it. And I remember when I was at university and I'd read a page from a book about trust law, and I'd get to the end of the page and not understand a single concept and be like, okay, we'll start again. We'll read the page again because this is really hard. And yeah, I was grappling with really hard concepts of law, qualified, did well, got a job straight off the back of it. So all of those things, just following that career path, and then made it, which for me was becoming a solicitor. I'd gotten a job, I'd done my training contract, then I'd qualified as a junior solicitor. I had a desk with a window, because you start right in the middle in like a cubicle and then you kind of progress through your career. I'd got a desk and I was sharing an office. I had a coat stand, so I'd walk in and my shoes were all lined up. It was that kind of world where I went in a different shoes and had office shoes and office outfits and suit, gosh, everything.
And a real hierarchy, even just with where your desk was.
Yeah. And I remember sitting, looking out the window. I wanted that window seat, but I wasn't high enough in the building to actually see anything. It was just another wall. It was London, so it was another building. And then just thinking, is this it? This is what I wanted. I've done it. I've got the window seat. I've got the job. I am now qualified solicitor. This is me. And I remember just being like terrified on that day. And then sort of, it was literally like the next day being like, this is the reality for the rest of my life. I'm going to do this for the next 40 years is what I thought at that time. And I just thought there must be another way. And at that point, there wasn't. You weren't permitted to deliver legal services in any other way apart from through a regulated law firm at that point. So I just thought, that's it. That's the way it's going to be. And I'm successful. And by a lot of people's standards, I was, because I had the job, I had a big salary, I had the tick list. I had the London flat, the boyfriend, all of the things that I thought that I needed to be happy. And I wasn't unhappy, and I felt really bad because I felt a little bit empty because I wasn't happy. And I think that I learned then at that point something I'd never learned before, that there is a difference between being happy and being unhappy, and there is this state in between when you can just be. And I didn't want to be there. It didn't have to be something that was awful that was making me unhappy, but there was nothing that was making me really happy that I wanted to stay. So I began to look for other opportunities.
I think that's really brave to be like, I've got all of this, and not just stay there and continue climbing the hierarchy and all of that. How did you make that change then? And how did you decide what the change was going to be?
Yeah, I think is really hard, whether it's legal or any sort of career like that, where you feel like you've got what a lot of people would dream of. I think it's very hard. If you've created a life that you dreamt of and that others dream of, it's very hard then to even think that you might be being ungrateful for it. So everything I was doing, I was being very quiet about, and it was the start of social media. So Instagram was this new platform, and I would scroll on that sometimes in my, I wouldn't call it a lunch break, in the sort of 5 minutes when I was eating my lunch, and I'd look at this other world that other people had and the things that they did, and I decided I was going to climb Kilimanjaro. I'd seen other people doing these things.
As you do.
Yeah, I mean, I loved the outdoors, and I'd always love being outdoors, love health, love well-being, love fitness, all of those kind of things. So I decided I was going to do that. And I started an Instagram account, and I started tracking my journey. And it was things like I just posting about being at my desk again, eating a family-sized box of Maltesers for dinner, because there was nothing that it didn't have the brain space sometimes to think about what I'd want for dinner. And I'd eaten so many sandwiches from the local Sainsbury's local that I just was like, I don't want another sandwich. So I was just like, that'll do. And I was just always in the office, and so I was like, it started off being just an accountability thing to try and eat a little bit better and sort of document this journey, and then the training that I was going to do for Kilimanjaro. And at the same time, Instagram was growing as a platform, so I gained a following. And I loved health and wellbeing, but I didn't have any credentials in it. So I wasn't actually saying much about it at the time. And I got approached by somebody who said, we're trying to train it was when influencers were like right at the beginning. They were like, we would really want to empower people who have got a platform to share with knowledge. So would you like to do this personal training qualification? So I was like, yes, I would love that, because I would love to share more about what I'm doing, but I'm always really hesitant because I want it to be correct and I'm not qualified. So I became qualified doing that, and then was like, I'm thinking of leaving. Like, is that what I'm going to do? I'm going to become a personal trainer. That's going to be my life. But then I realised I didn't really want to be at the gym every day at like 5 a.m. or 6 a.m. or the evening sessions, like training. I was running classes and realised that obviously everybody in the city, they'd go off to work and then they would come and do that. So you'd have to top and tail when you worked. I was like, that's not really the life for me. So I was trying to work it out, but didn't really know. And then ended up stumbling into the idea of creating my own legal documents and legal templates that people could have, because friends would ask me, or friends of friends would say, oh, could you just help me with a contract? Could you just read this? And I was thinking, the amount of times I get asked, why don't I just create the document? So I did. And I guess they say the rest is history. We've now sold over 6 figures worth of legal templates alone. We've got a legal support hub, courses. I do loads of training and education and things like that. And it's grown beyond my wildest dreams, the Lucy Legal brand. And I just feel so lucky, but I'd never really planned it to be that way. I don't know if I meant to say that. I would love to say that I had this business plan and that this is exactly how I knew it would end up. But I guess, big dreams, working hard, and felt like something wasn't right, but I didn't want to let go of my legal career either. So I sort of created something that I could make it work for me.
Were your work in the know about this at the time? Were they kind of aware about the legal template shop?
This is a really interesting story, and I've never told this story before.
Exclusive.
They said they didn't, but I believe they did. And it was one of those things. I think I've never said anything before because they essentially said, it's in your contract, you're not allowed to do this. And so I've never wanted to be seen that I hadn't read the contract. But I know that loads of people don't read their employment contract, and I hadn't particularly. I think I'd read it, I think I knew. But my position throughout the whole thing was they knew, because they knew I was going off. I used to finish work early one day to go off to the gym to train people. And I used to, some of the people at work, a lot of the people, including senior management, followed my Instagram account.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Said, oh, we knew about your fitness, but we didn't know about the template shop. And really interestingly, in COVID, work received an anonymous email, apparently, saying that I had this side hustle on the side, and did they know about it? So obviously it all got, it's like a big thing, and I get called in.
So you're still working there, and this was in COVID, and you had the side hustle.
Yeah, and the timing of it wasn't ideal, in the sense that I'd been doing it for a year, and everything had been happening for a year. But when we were in COVID, I'd said to my husband, I'm going to set up a different business name for this. I've been doing it under a different business that we were going to do together. So I'd only just set up, which a company we still have, I'd only just set up Lucy Legal Limited. So from work's point of view, it totally looked like I was in COVID at home, setting up a brand new business, which I shouldn't have been doing. So we had this discussion anyway, and there was lots of other things happening in my personal life, and they said to me, choose. And we were trying to have a family at that time, and they went through a lot of things with me, and they're like, oh, just close the account down, and I carried on working for a while. And I said, okay, that's fine, I won't do it anymore. And then I was like, what am I doing? This isn't what I want to do. And so I chose the business, and I chose to take the leap. And then I believe they were a bit like, that's not what we thought you would choose. Well, let's make this work. And I said, oh, that's the choice.
Interesting. So they kind of backtracked a little bit on that.
Yeah, and I mean, I love that. I've never spoken about this publicly before, and it's something I've always actually wanted to talk about and to share. And I think it's really hard when you are doing two things, and where you're trying to create something in the background. And I was never doing anything. I never took their IP. It was all my things. It wasn't even that area of law that I was doing. I'd created everything myself. I was doing it in evenings and weekends. Mostly I was just doing it on Instagram anyway, just a bit on my phone. It wasn't like I didn't have clients at that time. I was selling legal templates. It was e-books and like downloadable documents that we still have now. And yeah, it was just a really interesting period of time where the priority for me then switched from building my career to wanting to have a family. And lots of people were jumping ship from that particular team. I was getting more and more work piled onto me. I'd got like £10 million worth of extra claims at a period when I'd said to them, we're struggling to have a family. We've trigger warning, we'd had losses. I was really struggling, and they didn't necessarily give me the support that I thought that I might get. And I realised at that point that why should they? Like, the workplace is not necessarily set up for any of that, and you're trying to carry on working every day whilst also having these horrific things happen to you mentally and physically. It's really, really tough. And I was just like, this, I think it's to do with stress. I think that this can't carry on. So I made the decision and said, okay, I'll go full time in a business which turns over not very much at all, and I'll try and make it work.
That's amazing. And that was when you were at home, because you must have also gone through the whole stress of shifting to work from home in COVID, which was a stress for so many people. It wasn't an easy transition.
Well, we worked from home 2 days a week.
Oh, okay. So interesting. You're ahead of the times.
So we were already doing, so that was good. But I never went back. I didn't even get half my stuff. I never got it back. They didn't.
Your shoes.
They said they couldn't. I know. They said they couldn't find it. I asked for things like literally like things that were like mementos and photos and loads of things, and they just said they couldn't find it. So
that was mean. And I don't know whether it's the right question to ask. Do you think if you had gone through that personally and the losses, would this have been your decision, or would it have come later?
I don't know if I'd ever would have been brave enough, because I'd watched for, by this point, probably 18 months, 2 years, other people living their dream life, other people living a life that I just didn't understand how I could make it my own. Like this, it was very much the early stages of Instagram laptop lifestyle. Everyone was in Bali, or so it seemed. And I was just like, you can't do that. It was just a life that I just thought, that's for them and not for me. I'm worked really hard to qualify. I've got a serious profession. How am I ever going to be able to make a job work for myself? I worked with some of the biggest businesses or the biggest brands in the world, but I didn't know how to run a business. I knew how to do the legal side of it, but I didn't have any experience running my own business. But then also was like, I don't want to live a life like this. And so it was a very, very difficult weekend. And I just made the decision in a weekend in the end to take the leap. And I guess part of it was for me looking at the finances that we had to see where we were with that, to see what the plan B would be. And I guess I knew that I really wanted to have a baby. We weren't pregnant at that point, but I really wanted that. And so I just thought, look, if we are lucky enough to get pregnant and have a baby, if the business doesn't work out, I'll go and get another job. I'm still a qualified lawyer. I still really respect the firm that I worked for before. I wasn't going to go back to them, but in the space, I was doing really well. And I think that's what's really hard for anybody that sort of climbed that corporate ladder, to then throw it all in. I think for anybody who was thinking about, you take the leap and work for yourself, I definitely would work out what the plan B would be. And I don't say that in the fact that it's going to fail. In fact, I remember hearing on a podcast somebody saying about this new way of working for lawyers, and that you were permitted to now work in this other way, which you weren't when I started looking into it. And they were saying, well, just make sure that you've got them, you know what you're going to say when you come back to practice and you're having an interview, and you can say like why your business failed. And I was like, and it was a group of guys, and I was like, that's not going to be me. I'm not going to let this fail. I'm never going to tell that story. But for ages, I just thought, well, I'll make sure that's an incredible story, so that when I do go back, I will tell them about how I juggled motherhood and was running a business, and how I can juggle all of the things. And that's why I'm a great asset to hire. And I'm proud I've never had to tell that story, because I've never had to go back.
Yeah, and I think that's such a weird way of framing it as well, because I think even if your business does close, go back, or you choose to go back to employ, it's not a failure, it's just part of that section of your life. And what I've really taken out from there as well is that what you'd look at these other people, and I think so many will relate to this who's listening to this now, potentially mainly the ones who aren't running a business maybe, and it's in their future, and of like, oh, that's not for me, that's not my life, because this is mine. And I think it's opening your eyes to what is possible. And like for both of us, in some ways, circumstances, we kind of both got angled that way, but we could have both taken the leap to do it. And I really respect people that do that, and it could be the life for you out there, which I really took from that.
Yeah, and I think the opportunity is there. I think when you look back in hindsight, there was so many things telling me, pushing me, saying do it, and I was worried. I was worried about what people think. I just think I worry about that way too much. I was worried about like what society would think. I was thinking, would I be respected? Even just with colleagues, like as a profession. I remember somebody saying that you'll basically become like the Uber of solicitors, where like anybody can call on you. And I just like really downplaying things. And I just realized that I don't care what those people that I don't know think. Like, I care about me and my life and my happiness. And I had a really unique opportunity to be able to build and create that. And it was terrifying. And I did take the leap with not a lot of savings. I remember calling a mortgage advisor and asking them, like, what would happen when we had to remortgage. I was terrified about that. And it was fine. Like, obviously, everyone's personal circumstance is different. Saying it's going to be fine, like, take a mortgage advice. But
no, I agree with that. We didn't even do it in hindsight. But then when it came to remortgaging, we're like, oh God, I'm self-employed now. And it was actually fine.
Yeah, I think just ask the questions. Like, I was worried about my mortgage. I was worried about not really having any savings and whether I could keep paying my portion of the mortgage I was paying, and also my pension. And I did have this feeling as well in the back of my mind about hopefully we would get pregnant, and therefore I had this really amazing maternity package I was giving up and walking away from. And so then I sat down and calculated the amount that I would need to have to match that package. And that's what I got then in a savings pot. So the amount of the month's worth of maternity, or, you know, like it drops off and it staggers down. I got all of that in a savings pot. And I think one of my proudest achievements in the business is that I got to the end of my maternity year and I'd not touched a penny of it.
That's amazing.
And I was so proud. You know, like, I'd managed, the business had done enough to pay me and to keep things going within the family. So I was paying my half of the mortgage, because you don't want to just suddenly become someone who's dependent on somebody else. Like, I think that's what's hard as a business owner. You have all your independence, as a working in a corporate job, and then you jump out of it and you're like, I don't want someone else to have to support me. And obviously that's going to be different for different people. Other people, that might not be an issue for them, but for me, I wanted to make my business work and to make it pay me a wage.
Can I ask you now, like, how did you write a business plan? Did you write a goal and then market? What was your plan? How did you manage to do that?
I did something I don't think that people do enough of. Didn't write a business plan, but I leveraged other people's audiences.
Ooh, okay, good tip here, right.
I had a product and I'd created it, but obviously I needed to sell it. It didn't take much for me to create the product. So I had them ready, I had the template shop ready, and I was slowly building that out in the background. But I didn't have any clients and I wasn't offering one-to-one legal support at that time. I didn't offer any one-to-one services, I just had the templates. So what I did was went to people with audiences who would need that. So I went to coaches, to groups where they were training people to be coaches, and said, you need this coaching agreement or this coaching bundle, provided them with a legal training for free, and then gave them a discount on the bundle. And I went around doing that over and over again. So it got to the point where I did a training and I would sell, it should have been like £500 worth of legal templates, but I was giving them for half price. So it was a fixed discount that I was giving them for a certain period of time, and then they'd met me. Do you know, like, and I hopefully come across as being passionate about what I do, because I really genuinely am, and I really wanted to make a difference for people. And that was what Lucy Legal was all about. It was helping people who at that point, remember I started in COVID, so a lot of people had set up a new business.
Online business owners were flourishing at that point.
Yeah, they were selling courses or memberships or products or all of these different things, but they didn't have any terms and conditions, and they wanted something that was robust, that would set them up as being somebody who genuinely cared and wanted to do things properly, so that they could then just focus on the important parts of their business. So they grab our legal templates, plug and play into their business, and then they carry on. So it was perfect. I was very lucky, right place, right time with that, because there were a lot of groups. So I remember doing a training, and it was honestly one of the most surreal experiences of my life, where I did the training and then people were buying, but it wasn't just like one, it was like, it was going, the alerts were going off and on and on and on and on and on. And we made £23,000 off the back of that. And I was just like, I was literally like we are now, like, still can't believe it, and was just like, okay, that was the business model, and it still is now. It's still
what a moment. All those notifications, I can hear it going off in my head. That would be so amazing to have.
And I kept them on because I was just like, this is so amazing. And I just kept looking at my phone, because it was a sort of a 48-hour window, and I just kept looking at it, and every time I opened I was like, and another one, and I kept saying to my husband, another one. He's like, no way. And I'd only gone full-time in the September. I'd worked my notice, so I knew it was happening, but I had gone from not selling anything in the August at all to then being like, okay, this has to now work.
And did you have any plans then? Because when was your first child born again?
So I was pregnant by that point.
And did you have a plan just to keep going? You didn't do any client work before at that point to keep going? But stop moving away from trading time for money, which is what you were doing, what everyone is like dream is to do.
Yeah, I had the dream, and looking back, I'm not sure why I made this decision, but by that point, I then got bored, which is not a good place for an entrepreneur to be, and the people didn't need me. Do you know, like I almost, the templates were so good that nobody ever asked questions. They just used them and was like, yeah, that's perfect, put them into their business. And so I missed doing what I did best. I missed supporting people with legal issues. And I was still had these voices in the back of my mind about, is this really a proper legal business? Do you know, like it's selling templates, you've branded the whole thing pink. Is this serious? So I set up a law firm and I started setting up the law firm in November 2020. So I'd not really given myself that much time. And it was, it went live in July 21. So when I had my first baby in the April, and then was juggling that. And to be honest, the law firm is as much red tape as you would imagine, but it was more about being able to support clients in an official way and give them advice. So I could give them the same advice through Lucy Legal, but it was just the fact that I wanted it to be through a regulated law firm because I thought that mattered to people. Turns out it doesn't matter at all. And you don't need it. And people come to me in Lucy Legal and ask for support all the time. And I think then I hadn't really got the reputation that I'm really lucky to have now of people coming to me and asking for support and knowing that I can give them guidance. So I thought I needed that law firm as well around me. I think that was really hard. That's really it's this identity shift. And I know that this is something that comes up in business and it comes up in motherhood, and it's really hard to grapple with about how you're seen and how you're perceived. And I think as a business owner, when you're starting out, you feel like you're not being taken seriously. And I think that's why I think the templates do so well, because people want to have a proper contract. They're like, I want to be official. I want to do things properly. I want this to elevate my business. And so people get the legal contracts so that they can put them in their business.
And I think businesses like yours have just made it so accessible and simplified it, which has been so needed for the smaller organisations, that it's equally important to be covered for and to have that and secure yourself in place. And we talked a lot about your maternity leave on another episode that we're going to be sharing soon. But what was the reality? Did you ever feel a clash once you became a mum? Because you were doing all of this in pregnancy, which is amazing. Did you ever become a mum and feel that clash of talking about the business, talking about motherhood? Did you ever feel that sort of pull in different directions? Because I know that is really hard for business owners as an identity.
I really struggled, and I think I still struggle a bit now to work out how much to share. I think I was very sensitive to the fact that people might be struggling because I had been through that struggle, and I didn't want to then just change all of my content and start talking about babies, especially because I didn't know anything about them. So I didn't want to be that person.
And it's not what you're selling. You're not a mum business. You're a legal business.
Yeah, and it is to help mums and support them, but I really struggled, and I think only now, sort of, I guess, nearly 5 years in, do I feel like I know how to navigate how to speak about it. And I still now do struggle, because I think it is really hard to articulate sometimes what you're going through behind the scenes, because I used to think, well, I can't really say much about being a mother anyway, because I don't really know what I'm doing. And that was very different to where I'd been showing up before, saying this is the trademark that you need, or this is I was giving people information based on experience and knowledge and qualifications. Whereas I was just suddenly thrust into this world of motherhood, which I didn't know anything about. So I thought, who am I to say anything? Also, was grappling with the privacy elements of sharing online. As I said at the start of the episode, someone had reported me. Someone had been watching what I was doing and reported us to HR to say she's running this business. So you don't know who's watching you.
When you have a bad experience online, it can knock you for quite some time, can't it?
It's important for us all to remember, I did grow, not a huge profile, but I'd got a profile in the sort of online fitness space where people would see me in public, and big things had happened. I'd ended up being on the BBC for something, just happened to be on the London Marathon. It had caught me getting my medal. Those kind of things had given a profile that is fine if you're an individual, but once you have a family, you then think, should I be putting them online? Should I not be? And I don't have any judgment about people who do. And they are obviously a big part of your life. And therefore there's like massive gaps almost of your life if you don't share anything, because people are, I think, like,
Yeah.
what are people thinking you're doing?
It is a real transition, definitely. I think someone I know, Rebecca, she's in the online coaching space and on Instagram, and she's like, actually, I've never thought about it when we talk about it in person. She was like, you have an account, Bumped Business Owner, all about motherhood and business, but yeah, you never share your kids more than the feet. She's like, and I was like, yeah, you just see feet. That's all you'll ever see with them, because it's not actually about them. It's about me as a mother and the business, which I think it's interesting. But I do think it's a transition, like you said. I'm definitely not a motherhood expert as well, but what I do know is running a business and being a mother, and it's leaning into what you know. But that took time. I think it does take time.
I feel like you're navigating so much with this new life. I didn't want to show up and say, I've had no sleep, because I thought people are going to think that's not professional. Do you know, like, I carried on. And this has been really interesting for me, because throughout my motherhood journey, my husband has worked and not worked. He's been on different contracts. And he says, and I hear him say things like, oh, I can't do a meeting at that time. I have to pick the children up, or something like that. And it's really triggering for me when he says something like that. Like, I will say something like, I can't do it that time, I've got something in the diary, I would say, or I've got another commitment in my diary. I would never say it's because I work half with my husband and I'm half of the day with my child, and half of the day I've got like, so half of the time I have the children, half the time I have childcare so I can work. And we've done that for periods of time. It's been really different as the journey has gone along, how we've split the childcare. But he would just brazenly tell people that he's with his child, and people accept it and they were okay about it. And I was thinking, I don't think I could have done that. Maybe it was a me thing, but I just don't think as a mother people would have seen it in the same way, where the congratulations that my husband gets, oh, how wonderful that you have your child for half a day. And you want to say, our child, like, it's hard, isn't it?
Oh, Lucy, I completely agree with that, because during COVID, my husband was interviewing for another role, and he was interviewing in the kitchen, because obviously it was COVID, and he was like, oh, I quite like standing here because we have the kids' pictures on the fridge, and he's like, quite like showing that, Dad, I've got his pictures, and I'm like, that is the complete opposite of how a mother will feel, and not all, but it is like the thing, oh, we've got to hide motherhood, hide the kids' pictures, whereas he had them proud, like, yeah, I'm a dad, here's my kids' pictures, and I'm like, and I just, you've kind of got to educate them on, like, it's different for us. Or I did Goldman Sachs business growth program last year, and a guy was like, gotta pick up the kids. None of the women had said that, and they were all mothers, and I know they were all doing it. And I think probably it took a dad to do it before we'd be at the point of like, gotta pick up the kids. And it's still a bit of it shows how much of a shift there still needs to be made if we're, people, we're literally on a podcast talking about motherhood and business, but we still have issues being open sometimes.
I think that for me was a real lesson in terms of, like, what do clients expect? What am I telling them? And I think this is where it does come into a little bit about contracts, a little bit about boundaries. But like, what is it that I'm meant to be delivering for my clients? I never have said to them, I am immediately available to you on the phone, like 24/7, whenever you call me, I'll pick up. And I think that was a real learning curve for me. It was very hard to go from a very corporate environment to then having the freedom of working for yourself. I mean, I don't know if this is helpful to anyone listening, but you don't have to be at your desk at 9:00 and stay there till 5:00. And I say that with love, because that's something I've only really recently come to terms with. How many years have I been doing this now? It's like nearly 6 years in. And I just really have struggled. And I think you have to let yourself evolve. And I worked with somebody earlier in the earlier part of my journey, and they would question everything and say, why do you have to do it like that? Would you do it like that? And I was like, because that's the way it should be. That's the way it's done. That's the way it should be done. And it's taken a number of years to sort of unravel some of that and think that you don't have to be available to clients all the time. And you probably have never committed to being available to them. And they don't mind if you want to work 8 till 2 and then take a 2-hour lunch break, or whatever you want to do, because as long as you get the work done, that's fine. And I think it's that level of freedom that comes with being a business owner that's almost a blessing and a curse, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's navigating who, and it depends on your service. And I always say this to the upsource team, it's about communication kind of thing. Because if they are expecting you around these certain hours and you're not going to be, just tell them. Because because it's just at the end of the day, like, you may, nothing might happen, but everyone will just feel at ease.
Yeah, and that was definitely something, because I had always been available to clients at work and had always, even in the evenings, have been available. It was then a very weird thing to even just tell people that you were going to be taking any time off,
Yeah.
or that you weren't going to be available. And I found that really hard. And I don't, that won't be the same for everybody, but there will be people listening to this who want to potentially change their life and create this incredible life for themselves. But it's a real journey and a real experience. And I think for me, it does come down to the whole point of thinking about what are you promising to people? What are you saying you're going to do? When will you be available? You can say your core hours are between 10 and 2, if that's what you want. If that's your business and the way you want to run it, then there'll be people who won't want to work with you if that's when your core hours are, because they'll need, especially for like VA support or actual different types of support, they need the support outside those hours. So that's fine. But then everyone's clear and on the same page, aren't they?
Exactly. And I say so say I had someone come to me with 5 days a week, 10 till 2, and I'm like, that's great. There'll be some clients who actually quite like that, because it's more, they'll know that I'll get that real active time during those hours. But it will be about the right client, and not all clients will be for that. And, you know, hopefully we can find them for you.
And the hard lesson to learn is that you can't work with everyone. And I think at the start you want to work with everyone because you need to, and you need the money, and therefore you have to be flexible. And I think that's also knowing now, like I've got 5 years of motherhood under my belt, but 6 years of running my own business, and things are very different. It's a very different life that we have now. And I have made so many sacrifices. I have worked so many late nights. I have done all of those things to be able to have the freedom I have now. I don't believe that you can create success by working sort of 1 hour a day on your phone. And I know there are people that will teach that kind of thing, but I believe that you have to put the work in. This is not like a millennial thing, but I think you have to put the work in. You have to become trusted by clients. You have to be known as someone who delivers, so that then they know that if they've emailed you and you haven't got straight back to them, that you will be working on it, and they've given you something and that you're trustworthy. I think when you start working with somebody else, say like a VA or something like that, you want to know that they can deliver and do the things, and you need them to be responsive.
Oh, it takes time to build the trust and to communicate that and build that partnership. I say every time you get a new client, it's like getting a new job each time. And you've hit the nail on the head. There will be people out there teaching you. You can build a business in an hour a day. And the reality is any good finance person will probably tell you no. And not one that might give you the income goals you want as well. I was going to ask as well. So your setup, you created this amazing life where you've both like gone in different times with the kids. What has childcare looked like? When did you decide to bring in childcare, and was that also a game changer for your business? Because I think that's a really interesting one, because I think there's a lot of mothers who feel so guilty about getting the childcare to prioritize their business, when I think it's very valid. I've not personally felt hugely guilty about that.
Yeah, I want to touch on something firstly before I answer that question, if that's okay, and that's the idea of mum guilt. And that as a concept, because you may have heard me say this before, I don't subscribe to mum guilt. I don't believe it as a concept. I think it's a social construct that's limiting for women. And I think it's quite dangerous, because if we just decide that everything we are doing is for the best of our family and our circumstances at each time, and the decision that we make is the right one, and we have more confidence in doing that, we can let go of feeling guilty. And I don't feel guilty at all about any of the decisions that I've made, because at each time it was the right thing for my family. Of course, there's a benefit of hindsight, and I maybe would have made different choices at different times, or even just not worked late, or thought I wish I could pick my child up a little bit earlier. But at each time I've carefully thought, is this the best situation for me and my family? And I regularly review that. And I know that I'm very privileged and I'm very lucky to run my own business and to have this amount of flexibility. But it also hasn't come easily. It's come being very carefully curated and doing things that people wouldn't normally do. And I say this against the background of somebody saying to me at the end of my sort of the first year of my husband and I having the children, saying, wow, nobody actually thought this was going to work. We all thought that this wouldn't work, and they didn't say we thought you would fail, but they said we'd never actually imagined, because although we never thought it would happen, but when my husband didn't go back to work and the business had grown enough, we were surprised, and we were like, wow, okay, now this is incredible. And everybody else was saying, oh yeah, we didn't think this idea of yours would work. And we just thought, oh yeah, you're doing shared parental leave. That's a nice thing to have. And so people don't believe it's going to work for you. And you have to work really hard and really curate it. And I think that from my point of view, this idea about adding on any extra pressure with mum guilt, we just don't need it.
No. And I think also it doesn't allow us to make mistakes, wrong decisions. We're going to in our business, we're going to in our personal life, and we're going to with our kids and family. And I think that doesn't leave us open to do that.
And you were asking about childcare and things, and like, even I know that we're talking about it in another episode, but in your circumstances where like you said, you don't have a choice. You have to earn money and you have to live a life, but also you have to like almost, I don't want to say be true to you, but you are allowed to have a life as well. You are allowed to have hopes and dreams and ambitions, and you're allowed to blend that with family life. And so to answer the question, we sent our oldest, or both of them, to nursery for 2 days a week when they hit 18 months. So they hadn't been to nursery before then. But we actually thought it was important. Amazing. It was important for us for sanity reasons. Do you know, like, because there was a period where my husband was like, oh, this is really good. We're just getting into the swing of things. That was like in the new year. And I was like, yeah, you know, we're having another baby in 3 months. And he was like, oh, gosh, yeah, we are. The whole routine's gone again. And that's part of motherhood and parenthood, isn't it?
Yeah, you summed it up there.
Yeah, and he was like, oh yeah, we just got into the rhythm. We're getting into the rhythm, and then we had another baby to throw into it. And then that baby, we did things differently. I had 3 months maternity at that time, and my husband was doing more work, but he was trying to start his business, so he was doing non-chargeable things. It was not bringing any money. So my business, I'd had to set it up so it could stretch us and cover us full time whilst he tried to build this business. And we had both of the children 3 days a week. Well, I guess it's not 3 days, is it? It's the rest of the days, 5 days a week. It was hard. It was a juggle. It was how it's been almost as well. Like last year, my husband did really well and had this contract that was a fantastic opportunity for him. So he went full time then. So then I was left with the children. And not that I never saw them before, but I think that was a massive shift for me to be the primary person in every single circumstance. So from having our second child, we split the time, mornings and afternoons, and if something went wrong with one of the children, it was whoever was on the morning, it was your responsibility, and you did the drop-offs and all of the things, but then it was all on me, and we didn't get much notice, so there wasn't a big run-in for me to prepare the business for revenue or any of that, and it's often quieter for us over the summer anyway. So I just went with it, had the most incredible summer, and realised that is what life is about. It's about creating those memories, and perhaps it gave me a different perspective on what success looks like, in terms of, we didn't hit the biggest revenue numbers we've ever hit last summer. We actually did do really well towards the end, a bit later on, because it definitely shifted something in me, and I changed my strategy slightly to be like, okay, this is what I now need to do, which was fascinating from a business point of view. But for me, I took the time with the girls. I had the summer holiday, and I was like, wow, this is success, being able to take that time out. And whereas before I'd always thought of success as getting that window seat in the office and having that coat rack and the fancy suits and getting the train and commuting into London, I realised that the people on the school drop-off that are there in their big cars and they're heading off to the office all day are probably not as successful as the people who are there and they're about to be doing a drop-off, and they're going to go for a run, or they're going to go to a Pilates class or something like that, and then they're going to go home and run their own business. And I think it was a massive shift for me to sort of be like, okay, I'm just changing my perspective on success, and nothing changed around me. Like, nobody had said anything differently, and that's when I realised that it's what voices you're letting in all the time, in terms of whether society is telling you should feel guilty for running your own business or spending time with your children, or not putting them in nursery or putting them in nursery. Whatever you're going to do is going to be wrong, but you literally cannot win. And I think that's what's really hard. If you put your child in nursery, you're doing the wrong thing. You have to make sure you're spending more time with them, but don't spend too much time with them. Don't like hold them too much. It just feels like you're navigating and you're always going to fail. And that's why I think that for me, I've just tried to be really insular and just think, what is it that I want to do to create the happiest life for me and my family? And maybe that comes across as really selfish or tone deaf or anything like that. And I feel that's what's so hard to share on a podcast like this, is that idea that you can do that. But I think if it makes us happy and it's not harming anyone else, then why would you not try and curate your life in that way?
Oh my goodness. And you've done such an amazing job of it. And I think something is to know is we both feel very privileged with what we do. But I was sat at a mum's school dinner recently and I was surrounded by, it was 2 lawyers, a vet, all very corporate career people. And all of them were like, oh, if I could change my career now, I'd do this. My 10-year get out plan is this. And it's like, what about you, Caroline? And I'm like, I don't have what, like, I'm happy with what I'm doing now. I have goals to grow it. I have like goals to, diversify potentially, but no, like, I'm not changing my career now. And I think that's such a privilege. So it's knowing beyond those people on the drop-offs and the big cars, is that, knowing what your success looks like and what a great thing you're showing your girls and showing them is you've created a life that you enjoy. And you're not going to enjoy it 100% of the time.
Yeah, and I think it's as well, I suppose, when I was saying that, I'm thinking like it's still having a massive impact. Do you know the number of entrepreneurs that we help, and then in you in a similar way, you create this massive ripple effect because you allow people to run their business in a more successful way, so even more people can take that leap and not even wait for that 10-year point. And I think that's what I'm so passionate about, in the sense that Lucy Legal is one of those keys that open the door to you being successful in your business and to give you the confidence to run a business. Because let's face it, there's nothing special about you or I. We just took the leap. If we can do it, anyone can do it. And I say that knowing that we have privilege and knowing that potentially we had partners around us and that kind of thing that may have not necessarily had to shoulder anything, but were there in case. It would have been a safety net if needed. But we don't have a massive like family close by. We don't have a huge support network of people who were able to help with childcare. We did have a bit of support, but not loads. A lot of it we've done juggling, and juggling meaning having a ridiculously long day, a really hard day, and then the kids being kids and being how they are, and then just being mentally inside, like trying to manage everyone's emotions, giving them something for tea that they do like and they do usually eat, but they don't want to eat it. And it's all of like that at the end of your day, but then opening the laptop and starting work at 8 o'clock some days because I'd maybe been with one of the children, or it's been a holiday day or whatever it is, and working from like 8 till 3 a.m. and then still maybe having broken sleep because one of them's up in the night, and then going again day after day. And it's not the life for everybody, but we're definitely coming out the other side of it being more spacious, in the sense that as your kids get older, they have to go to school. And I believe that putting them in a nursery setting or some sort of setting away from you is setting them up for school, because that's just something that I believe. But unless you're going to homeschool, you probably are going to send your children to a school at age 5 anyway, and that's sort of where my children are heading. So I think you make those choices, but we do get to do it. And you say, so privileged, and we're so lucky, aren't we, to run our own businesses?
So lucky. And I think what you mentioned there about our partners as well is like the privilege we've had. And my husband works, well, of course he works, but he's employed, and but he's very flexible with what he's always done, always has been to an extent. And also very supportive of what I do. But something we keep weaving in and out is relationships throughout this series, because that's both what me and you really discovered. And I think it can sound so easy of like the tag team size, and I know it's not. But I think what's really interesting is also our generation, we're really, really going further to challenge those gender norms in the home. And so we're not the default parent for everything. And I think you guys are really showcasing that. But how has that been in the early years and navigating that? Because I do think it does make it harder in the early years to be determined not to be just the default parent. But I always say to my husband, I was explaining this to someone last week, I'm like, I'm putting in the spade work now for later down the line, so he never has resentment from me about this, because we've always gone through a cycle where he's more in charge or I'm more in charge of things in the home. So how has that been for you in the early years?
Yeah, I think it's been really difficult. And I think even the use of the word resentment is really interesting. And I think probably we would both have had that a little bit at times. And I think, and I'm happy to be open to say that. And your roles shift and you really do lose your identity. And I know that people say it, and it's very hard to explain. But I think because I'd stayed working, I still had that work identity. I still was going on calls. I was still needed. And I know that my husband, all of a sudden had this massive shift, and he wasn't even able to, he'd say things like, I can't even feed her properly because she wouldn't take the bottle. So it was always still me. Everything was then me. And I think that was a massive shift for him. And I think he handled that so well. And he's not the kind of person that would be interested in what society thinks about him, like then being, I guess, a kept man for a year or so. And it was definitely something that was tricky for us both. And I think that I remember somebody saying to me, oh, I'd love somebody to run my home and do all of the things and make sure that everything was ready. I was like, whoa. He looks after the children, which is a full-time job. He doesn't look after all of the home and do all the things, all of the birthday presents, all of the making sure the clothes are ready, and all of the brain space things. It's still me. I was still the person that got called every time. If one of the children was sick, it's always me that gets called first. I am still the default parent in many respects. And I think until last year, when I then became fully responsible for everything, I didn't realize how hard that job is. And I think that we've done really well in this splitting the roles and having the, like, you're responsible for this and I'm responsible for this thing. But then being, okay, I can't carry all of this now. You need to carry it. And having that communication there. But I definitely looked at it in a different way. And I think I've always been really transparent and said a full day with the children is really hard. I don't know how stay-at-home mums do it all the time. I knew from the start I wouldn't be very good at doing that. Mm-hmm. It takes a particular type of patience and calmness. And I also have an identity. I want to work, and I didn't want to ever lose that completely. Is that selfish? Possibly. I don't think my children are going to resent it. They've just always seen that I think it's important that you have this ability, that you work as well, and that you have your own identity and you don't lose your hobbies and all of those kind of things. But I think that definitely there's a massive piece that doesn't get talked about that relationship piece, that you're passing each other and not really having any sort of relationship at all. And we were at times even trying to work together to try and like help each other at that kind of point, when my husband would I say I'll be with the children and you can help with our work, because we were really busy and he didn't have much work. And it's such a different dynamic trying to work with your husband, live with them. It's a lot, isn't it?
Yeah, and that I've always had that work boundary. Unless I've got a problem or I need to vent, I think that's been our relationship boundary, is that he's never involved in the business. It's mine.
I think that's a good one to have. And I see people all the time saying about retiring your husband, but they lose their identity and your perception of them changes as well. Do you know, if you're with someone and they obviously are the most incredible parent to your child, there is this massive shift of you then providing for everybody. And I don't think that it's talked about at all, that women then become the provider, the breadwinner. For a start, it's really stressful. They're like having to be able to support your team and being the person that supports your whole family, and it just being all on you, alongside all the other stresses of motherhood and everything else that we talk about and we'll talk about on this series that you have to try and juggle. You then have to throw into that, how are you two going to be in a partnership? Is there anything left for either of you at the end of the day to have any kind of relationship? I think that's really hard. Nobody's got it easy. Like, I think that's what you have to sort of remember, and that each period we're also going through different phases of what you need and what you might be grieving about, how things have gone previously or how you're handling things. And I think just the behavioral things. I mean, I'll be in situations where I've had a really tough day, like most parents, and you're trying to manage your own emotions and trying to manage the children and trying to manage your partner and just trying to hold everything together. And I think it's that sometimes that consciousness of saying, why don't you take 5 minutes, or why don't you step outside? Or even sometimes I'll say, I'm just going to go for a walk, and just take yourself out of the situation, especially now the kids are a bit bigger. We weren't able to do that as easily before. And I know that I've talked to a lot of other mums who are business owners, and they say they find the transition between the two is so jarring. Like, most of the time you're trying to spin all the plates. You're in between meetings and there's school WhatsApps going off and things that are important, and you're trying to juggle what's important, what's not, what's important in my business, what's not, in the same way that everybody working is doing. But I think that the difference between when you're employed and when you work for yourself is there's no hard stop necessarily. There's not, especially if you work from home, you're not leaving the office. And I know that sometimes people have said things like, can you stop, go and walk around the block before you then are being mum mode? Can you do that? And thinking an adult, that's lovely, but it's not always as easy, is it? You're just thrust
No,
back into it
no.
and
And
screaming and the noise,
yeah.
and it's a lot.
And it took years for me to really get the boundaries of not taking calls on the school run. And I don't know how I managed to shift from that, because it wasn't like the calls stopped needing to happen, because the team has grown since then.
How
My
did you
plate's
manage
got
to
fuller
even,
work-wise.
how did you do that?
I don't know. I think, and it wasn't intentional. It would be like, oh, can we hop on a call? And I think it was the boundaries thing. And I bless one school mum. I remember her actually like helping me with my eldest when I was doing a call, and I was just like, grateful to her, but it still wasn't easy. And it is. I think it comes to that boundaries piece again of like, because now my hard stop is 2 to go for a walk and then pick up the kids, or whatever time it is. It might be later in the day if they've got clubs and wrap around. Now I'm in that dreamy world where it's a bit different. But I really had a challenge with that. I don't know what it was. And I think something in me was like, I can't do this anymore. And so now I've got like this thing where no one bothers me at that time of the day.
And I definitely think that is so fascinating and so helpful. You have this ideal of what you want to do and where the boundaries are within your life and within your business, and then you start to put the business together that can support that. And even if you can't do it right away, that you're just mindful of it. Because I went, I suppose, from having no one-to-one clients, then having loads, and it being like people calling me all the time, even when we were on holiday. But I had no choice about that, really, because we'd taken on those clients because we needed the income. We needed to make those work. We needed to offer these bigger packages where I was available. And that's the decision you have to make sometimes. Like, you weren't purposely going, I'm going to take this call on the school run. This is an ideal time to take this important call.
This is what I want to do.
Yeah, because you have no other choice. But it's then it's about having these stops. Yeah, all the time. Like, we regularly, like, every quarter, but also I do have it in the back of my mind a lot, like, is this working? Is this right? Is this what I want? Am I living a life that I'd be proud of, that I'm excited to live, a bit morbid, but if it all ended, or if something happened tomorrow where my life completely shifted, would I be pleased with the choices that I had made, or have I just created myself another 9 to 5? And that's when I was saying earlier, I've realized, yes, I have. I literally am sitting at my desk all the time, and it's not the life I wanted. I think it's hard when you've got so much freedom available to you, but then I still have to do the work because I need to earn money. Yeah. And I need to, if I don't do the work, especially like you and I, like, it is driven by us. It's generated, whilst I may have passive products, they don't just sell themselves. You have to market them, and you have to do things to make sure that people buy.
That's it. I may not be doing the VA work, but my job is to keep everyone happy, bring on the clients, keep the agency running. Yeah, exactly. And so, Lucy, what tips have you got for creating those space and boundaries you mentioned that you just have there?
I think knowing that it's going to change as you go through, and just being mindful of what's right for you now doesn't have to be right for you forever. So at times you may think that maybe you are prioritizing your business more. And I know that we've got some fantastic guests that are going to be part of this series, and I know that they have to make some really difficult decisions at the moment and the groundwork, and it can feel like you're making a lot of sacrifices, but it's for the best intentions. And I think that boundaries are a really hard thing. If you didn't have them before having a child, you're not going to necessarily have them now, and it's something that we can learn and we can adapt and we can develop. And I think it's just this process of whatever situation you're in now with your life, with your business, whether you're employed, whether you've got a child, whether you're expecting a child, whatever it might be, is that you can make the choice to change. It's not necessarily as easy for some people. It's not like you can just quickly set up a business and walk into that business tomorrow. But if you are sitting there thinking, this isn't the life I want to live, you can change it and shape it and curate it in a way that means that you are living the life that you love.
Love that. That's such a great point, because you can start, not saying start the business, but you can start to think about it and shape it and plant that seed for the future. And do you have a vision of what 5 to 10 years, what your business and success will look like? Or are you in that very much, this works for now and seeing the next year through?
I think very much like you, I feel so lucky to be having the moments now where I'm like, this is it. I went to a scarecrow's wedding last year at my daughter's school, and that's like been the highlight of my career so far, in that I had just started working with probably the biggest vision board client you can imagine, and it was on been on their vision board the whole time before I'd even started a business, that maybe I could be their lawyer. I was working with them. Obviously, we're working on a big project, and it came up and they said, we need to have a meeting at 2:00 on this Monday. I said, I'm afraid I can't attend a meeting then. I need to go to a scarecrow's wedding. My daughter just joined reception. It's really important that I'm there. And they were doing, obviously, the Julia Donaldson book of the Scarecrow's Wedding, and they'd all dressed up and they got these hats and everything. And that, to me, was like, it was fixed in the diary. There was space, white space either side. It was happening. And even though there was a client who said they needed me, and actually I said, I've delivered what I need to deliver. We spoke in the morning and I said, I'm back again tomorrow. They got it. They possibly wouldn't have said it if they weren't a parent, if I'm completely honest. But just being able to have that complete flexibility now to be working with my absolute dream clients and showing up
not
for my
compromising.
children. Yeah. I feel like that to me is that's my idea of success. And it won't be the same for everybody, but I feel like I'm really fortunate to be living that.
That's amazing, Lucy, and so inspiring. And what I love is that you didn't come in and say, this is what I do. You come in and show them the journey of what it has got to take you there. And it is a journey. You haven't done that by doing an hour a day. You've got there, and that is amazing. So credit to you. And I think you might answer this question, but we talk a lot about joy in this podcast. For you, I can imagine joy being having those moments in the calendar and knowing they're there and your white space. Is there anything that you've found now and rediscovered that brings you joy and that really makes you a better business owner?
I'm definitely discovering that now, and I think I will be the first person as well to be transparent and say I've made a lot of sacrifices to be able to create the business in this way, and a lot of that has been not having hobbies. Like, I don't think I've read a book since I didn't in fact read a book until just recently when I joined a book club, since before I'd had the children. Like, I left a lot of that behind, but I do love being outside. I love being outdoors, skiing. We were really fortunate to be able to take our family on this incredible long ski trip last year, which was a time that I just wanted to live and work in the mountains, which we did. And there's a lot of things that I'm planning, and there's something that I have been putting together ahead of a big milestone birthday that I've got at the end of this year, and that's a big running challenge that I'm putting together because I do love doing that. So I'm running 140 miles, which sounds a bit ridiculous and then possibly is, but running a really long way to raise money for charity, and also to show that life as you head into your 40s and after having children doesn't have to end, and that you can have hobbies and things that you love doing. You can still achieve big things. And even saying that out loud feels huge because it's something that is going to be really hard. It's something that is definitely not, I think we almost write ourselves off after a while, don't we, of like what we can achieve and our successes, and we put everything into our children. So I am going to try and pull back a bit of the time for me to prioritize doing something for me, because I've not been good at doing that. I can sit here and talk about business success and growing the business and being present for the children, and I think I've done that well, but I definitely haven't looked after my own health and well-being as much as I probably should have done. So I'm excited to move into a bit of a new chapter now where I'm prioritizing.
What an honest answer. Thank you so much for that. And I'm really excited to learn more about your challenge. And classic, I feel like it's a classic Lucy. You're going in big. Thank you, Lucy. That I am so excited because this is the first of our 6-episode collaboration. And like I said, we've got some amazing guests. We've got some mini episodes coming up. So continue to listen because this isn't the end of Lucy for a few episodes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to that special episode brought to you in collaboration with Lucy Legal. Over 6 episodes, we'll be discussing big topics in motherhood and business, relationships, finances, maternity leave, and AI. If you're a business owner and want to make sure that your legal terms are correct, and most importantly, that you are covered, go to Lucy Legal for real legal guidance, templates, and support. Link in the show notes of this episode. Thank you.